friends. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is actually a relaunch of Soaring Eagle TV. We've transitioned away from just the audio podcasts, and I had to be convinced to do that. I'm going to be upfront with you because I like listening to audio so that I can be doing other things, multitasking and listening, and video. I feel like I got to watch it. Now, some of you might not. You may just listen to the audio of the video, and that's fine. But anyway, the point is I'm giving in to what the techies say people are watching today. So this is a relaunch, Soaring Eagle TV. Blessed to have Pastor Brandon Holthaus join me today. Brandon, thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
Hey, man, it's an honor to be with you, Pastor. I appreciate what you're doing and your ministry. So thanks for bringing me on, man.
Thank you very much. So we're kindred spirits. We've talked about this every time we get together, and it's becoming more and more obvious to me, those who, how shall we say it, they're checked out. Those who have just kind of ignored the headlines and they're wanting instead to just, and listen, friends, I'm not criticizing. I'm just making an observation. I think we need to pay attention to what's going on today. In other words, the headlines, and do a little bit of due diligence and dig down a little deeper than the headlines. Maybe we should start there, Brandon. You can't always believe everything you read online, can you?
No, you can't, especially coming from social media. But, this is the day and age we live in where information is flowing like it's a fire hydrant. And here's the thing, Mike. The pastor's job is to be a watcher on the wall and to alert the flock about what's going on. I mean, that's just the normal duty of a pastor. Yeah, we're feeding the sheep and supplying the word of God, but that watcher on the wall thing is alive and well, and most pastors are not doing that, unfortunately. A guy like yourself and the circle that we hang out with obviously are doing it, but that's few and far between. And what's happening right now, the birth pains are happening in prophecy. We're aware of that. And things are staring us in the face. I mean, think this. 20 years ago, if I said, hey, they're going to start eventually a global government, people thought I was crazy. And then thought you were crazy and we were part of the tinfoil hat brigade. Now, they say it, and it's not a conspiracy theory. They say that's what they want. Or how about a digital currency? Or how about the issues in the Middle East with Israel and all that's going on there? How do you ignore that? And unfortunately, because of the seeker-friendly movement, the purpose-driven movement, the Willow Creek model, churches have adopted that. And so now they're not going to talk eschatology. They're not going to even talk about current events. Mike, it's not even just all prophecy. It's here I live in the state of fruits and nuts here in California, and we've got issues going all the time because of Pharaoh Newsom up there in Sacramento, and these are current events. So, like for instance, AB 495, I think it was, and again, your audience may not understand it, but let me explain something. They wanted to basically take away parental rights and say that children could decide who they wanted to be as a guardian of them. But really, it was an opening for anyone like that could adopt your child without your permission. And anyway, that's how crazy California is, and it passed. Now, here's my thing, Mike. Very few churches were even bringing this to the attention of their own congregation. And so that's not a prophecy issue. Is a parental rights issue, and we went to Sacramento with Jack Hibbs, and we protested and did everything we could possibly do. But where were the churches? And so it seems to be a problem, not just an eschatological problem of prophecy, but it's just current event stuff, that's affecting children.
Yeah, the thing that really bothers me about it, Brandon, is that some of these folks will understand and realize what's going on when it's too late, after the clamp has been put on, and they wonder, oh my goodness, why didn't I see this? Well, there were plenty of folks such as yourself. You mentioned Pastor Jack. Lots of people that we know that are sounding the alarm and saying we need to oppose this kind of thing. And it's really, in my view, Brandon, it is our responsibility as under shepherds to the king to sound this alarm and point these things out, and not leave the flock just aimlessly wandering around without any direction.
Absolutely. So, we're told to admonish our flock of saying, we're warning that there are wolves in sheep's clothing, or whatever is threatening the flock. I have a duty as a shepherd to use the rod. And here's the interesting thing. You and I know, Psalm 23, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. So the shepherd carried two sticks. And they had the crook one that kept unity of the sheep, but then it was the rod. And a lot of pastors, Mike, are not using the rod, and the rod was used by the shepherd to beat away the enemies of the sheep, whether that be a coyote or a wolf. What I'm saying is a lot of shepherds, pastors, will not use the rod, and it's a missing element. And man, if you don't use the rod, how do you beat away the enemies of the flock? I mean, they're sheep without a shepherd if you will not exercise the rod to warn them of what's coming down. And it could be anything. It could be a bill that they're trying to pass. It could be an abortion issue. And you know what happens, Mike? A lot of the pastors have said, well, Brandon, that's just political. And I'm like, political? When did these moral issues become political? And by the way, to be salt and light, I've got to lean in on that. I've got to tell my flock how to vote, what to do, what to oppose, what not to oppose. And it's not happening, Mike. Here's what's the consequence of this. We start losing the culture.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. You lose the culture, you're not getting it back. Do you really think, and not you, but does anyone really believe we're going to get the Ten Commandments put back into public schools? You know what I mean? We lost the battle there. We didn't contend for the faith, and we just keep giving up more and more territory. Before you know it, we're going to live in Paganistan. That's where we're going to live. We're losing the culture because of this.
Yes. Yeah. I agree 100%. And I've made this observation to a few people recently, and they said, that makes sense. I hadn't thought about it like that before. I'm sure you've made the same statement. Used to be when I was younger and a new believer 40 some years ago, culture was downstream of the church.
Yeah.
So the church was influencing and the culture was reflecting. I think that's become inverted now. I think the church is downstream of the culture, and it's just getting behind and supporting whatever the culture says is the new thing. What are your thoughts?
Oh, totally. I can just show you the stats. As an example, Pew Research found that 54% of those who claim to be Christian support gay marriage and have no problem with homosexuality. I'm just using a blanket term that Pew Research. So what it states then is the majority of those who identify as Christians now support gay marriage and homosexuality. That's the problem right there. There we go. And it goes even beyond that. It's how many Christians now support abortion? How many Christians now are anti-Israel and pro-Hamas? And when you ask them, hey, Christian, tell me, what does the river to the sea mean? They don't even have a clue what they're talking about. They have jumped on the bandwagon of the social justice movement. And you're right. The social justice movement is inside the church.
Yes.
And so a lot of pastors, this is interesting. A lot of pastors will bow a knee to the woke narrative and make George Floyd a saint, but then they won't talk about Irina Ruta, who got killed on a subway in New York. They will say nothing about it. And by the way, they would not say anything about Charlie Kirk being martyred at all. And I'm like, how can you not even say something about Charlie Kirk's assassination? That guy did more than 98% of the pastors, Mike. And so when you say it's the culture's inside the church, it's totally there.
Yeah, absolutely is. Brandon, let's talk about what's going on. A few of the things that are going on in the world today.
Sure.
There's this push, is putting it mildly, to ingrain artificial intelligence into everything, and it's not going to stop. I know a lot of people very early on in this current administration criticized President Trump. I think the figure was $500 billion that he committed, $500 billion committed to invest in AI. And I think he told the bare naked truth when he said, somebody's going to win this race and it can't be China. Yes. We have to win this race. I thought, well, that's the truth right there. However, artificial intelligence comes with a pretty hefty price tag. So let's talk about that in terms of what is it doing? What is it designed to do? And where are we going with this? And what should we expect as believers to see?
Yeah, boy, howdy. Man, it is Pandora's box with AI, artificial intelligence. And so let's just start with giving people right now, and then let's project. So right now, why did it teach itself chemistry? Why did it teach itself bomb making? Why did it teach itself to do all kinds of nefarious things like lie constantly? They cannot figure out why AI lies. And I've messed with it, and it's lied to me, and I've showed the proof. Well, it's in this article, and these are the facts, and it just goes on tilt. It's like the algorithm is set and bent towards a leftist woke type of narrative, and that tells me it has a brainwashing effect. Now, let me go one step further. I just read an article from Futurism that says that AI is starting to have people commit suicide. These people get into, it's a faux relationship. It's not real, but the people think it is. And they get in these AI chat box, and they either get in romantic relationships, or in the last article I read on Futurism, the AI caused the 40-year-old man to commit suicide. It encouraged him to commit suicide. The guy did, and now OpenAI is being sued for the suicide that it caused. Well, that's just the immediate danger, okay? And the fact that you cannot rely on it, and even Yuval Harari, not that I'm a fan of that guy. That guy is the brainchild of the World Economic Forum. He even said, do not think for a moment that AI is just a neutral tool in your hand like a knife. A knife could be used to put butter on bread, or it could be used to kill somebody. It's just depending on how the user uses it. And he says AI is not like that. AI is the knife that will stab you. And so that's what people need to understand. Okay, so let's project out a little bit. Already, AI is threatening jobs like there is no tomorrow, Mike. And what is getting ready to happen is people are getting ready to lose a lot of jobs. And look, if you're in the computer science industry and anyone else, medical, anything that deals with computers or anything like that, and data inputting, secretaries, administrators, it's all over now because AI will do the job. And already the stats show that CEOs are now turning to AI rather than hiring employees. Now, here's the interesting thing. Taco Bell, Burger King, all these fast food have started to play with AI and starting to implement AI. So they're eliminating jobs on the fast food circuit as well. Where does this go? Well, when you start having people getting displaced and not having jobs anymore, and there is no work for them, you got a problem here. And I think this lends itself into already what they're talking about, a universal basic income given to people, because they're going to be without job. And I think that's where this is going. And what did Yuval Harari say? What are we going to do with all these useless people? He says, well, we'll just give them drugs and video games.
Yep.
And I think that's the deadly part that no one is seeing, that where does this go from here? And now you're talking about a system that controls people. Imagine all these people now on the government dole, depending on the government to give them their basic income, no incentive to work because there is no more job. Oh my goodness, we have the makings of a controlled system now.
Yes.
And obviously, we won't be here for the tribulation period, but for goodness sakes, anyone with any sense can see the setup for a global system controlling everybody through it. And then what follows on the heels of that? Well, if your economy tanks, then you got to, how are we going to pay these people? Well, we're going to go to a digital currency. And that's already in the talks now. So you have a mixture of digital currency, programmable, with people on universal basic income. And then and I know, they will program, hey, you had too much bread this month, or you had too much, you drove too far. We're going to control your driving. Dude, that's what's coming, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a perfect setup too, Brandon. What you just described is a perfect setup for causing billions of people to bend the knee and to take the mark.
Yes, totally. It's a psychological conditioning, because it's not. People will want to sign up for it. For instance, if you are having security issues, like another topic I talked about last night was, there are terrorist cells, and what happens if these terrorist cells start striking people? Well, they're going to want security, and this is what they're going to say: we've got to have everybody identified. If you're telling me, Brandon, there's 18,000 cells of terrorists out there on American soil, then what's the solution? And someone will come and say, digital identification will be the solution on everybody. And people will sign me up. I want security. And I think, Mike, that's the key, is that it's a psychological thing. We saw even in the shutdowns that people will be willing to sell out their liberties for peace and security.
Yeah. And when they do that, the scripture says what? Sudden destruction will come upon them.
Yeah, totally, man. Totally. Yeah. And so it's a setup. And I think right now people are being conditioned to it, to accept it. Yeah. Okay, so what are they going to do? So the way the economy is going, and the inflation keeps rising, and you have what they call a K economy, where the stock market is going great for Wall Street, but on the other thing, it's going down for jobs, and AI keeps taking more. Well, what are you going to do with that, man? If people can't afford a house, there's people in California, the young people can't even afford homes here in California. They're not going to be able to own a home. And it goes back to Klaus Schwab. You will own nothing and be happy. And so you can almost see how they're stair-stepping us to that.
Yeah, very clearly, in fact. Mm-hmm. Middle East, lots going on, always lots going on. I think that the reason there's such widespread confusion, and I'll try to unpack this so we touch on all of these things, Brandon, but there's such widespread confusion about Israel, about its role in the biblical narrative. I think the reason for that is because so many Christians have just jettisoned the prophetic scriptures. They don't see any need to understand it. But President Trump recently, in the last couple of months, ran it through the United Nations. I was very surprised to see them get behind it, but then I don't know what to make of the UN sometimes, because they telegraph things. But anyway, his board of peace, that he assigned a lot of nations, governments up to participate in this board of peace. He's offered permanent seats if they want to be on. It's only cost you $1 billion. Well, what's $1 billion, right? So, but my concern is, and I want to hear your thoughts. My concern is that some of the nations that they've invited are Hamas enablers. I'll put it that way. Hamas enablers. Israel's already made it perfectly clear that they're not going to support. Now, I don't know what kind of conversations they're having behind the scenes, but they're not going to support some of these governments being involved. That's going to create an issue for President Trump that's going to have to be addressed. So let's unpack all of that. The Board of Peace, what are your thoughts about that as an organization and its likelihood that it's going to really accomplish anything meaningful?
Yeah, the scary part about this is it's a violation of the land covenant and the Abrahamic covenant, obviously. And you know, and I know, man, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And Joel talks about dividing the land, and you cannot do that. So the first thing right off the bat, from a biblical perspective, is it's in violation of the land covenant. The land belongs to the Jewish people, and no other person can run it. Trump can't run it. The Palestinians can't run it. Israel must run the Gaza and Judea and Samaria. And that was a mistake a long time ago in 2005 when Israel gave up the Gaza to them, to the Palestinians. And what did they do? They voted in Hamas and it turned it into a bomb factory. And, you know, and that's on Israel. Israel shouldn't have done that. Yeah. And so at the first outset of it, when I heard about this, I'm like, Trump, please, somebody tell Trump not to do this, please. But let's get to the political aspects of this. So Trump is putting on all these guys, whether it's Tony Blair, who's nothing but a globalist, or then Islamic leaders on this board. Yeah. And I think one of them is including Qatar. And Qatar is a major funder of Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, and all kinds of terrorist organizations around the world. It's unbelievable, right? And so now you have these guys, these Muslim leaders, dictating to Israel what's going to happen on their land. And it's a total conflict of interest. And let's talk about it from the United States standpoint. You have Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff organizing this. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are compromised. How so? Well, because they have taken millions of dollars from Qatar and Saudi Arabia, both of them, into their investment firms. Steve Witkoff was bailed out of a $650 million real estate deal in New York, and I think Qatar bailed him out. Saudi Arabia has put millions of dollars into an investment firm owned by Jared Kushner, and all of a sudden, these guys are wheeling and dealing with these countries that are naturally enemies of Israel. This is the most bizarre thing, Mike, I have ever seen. And I tried to get my arms wrapped around this. I guess Trump sees it as just financial incentives and doesn't incorporate the Islamic ideology behind them. And I guess he, art of the deal type of mentality, to where he thinks if I just make them successful and they get a piece of the pie and they get some money in this, then we can calm down them. But we're dealing with Islamists who want a caliphate, that want to destroy Israel and the United States. And I can't believe there's people around Trump that haven't warned him about this. So I'm a little perplexed, Mike. I've talked too long, but I think that's the political problem that we see, not just the biblical problem.
No, that's perfect, Brandon, because that's exactly how I see it. I don't understand why someone, maybe it's because he doesn't have anybody that holds the views that we do concerning Iran and Turkey. Why is he wasting precious days negotiating, in air quotes? The Iranians are not negotiating; they're stalling. They're wasting time to fortify themselves even further. And while all that's going on, you already know this: cargo planes from Russia and China delivering all kinds of things. Why doesn't Trump see this? That Iran has no interest, zero interest, in coming to any kind of an agreement. They're just stalling in order to build up their defenses for what they believe might be a potential attack. how do we get through to this administration on this particular subject?
Man, you hit the nail on the head. I wish a guy like Mike Huckabee. I think Mike Huckabee has our understanding of Scripture that could lean in on that. But his spiritual advisor is Paula White. Well, good luck with that. She's NAR. She ain't going to be a help to that. And and I don't know. I think this is complete ignorance. I don't think that Trump's trying to be nefarious or anything like that. I think he's just doing what he did in New York, but on a global scale. But the problem is, you have to consider the Middle East mindset and the Islamic mindset. These guys. Here's what I wish could happen, Mike. I wish you could go on there and tell Trump, look, these guys can practice hudna. They can do a false peace treaty with you and then turn around 10 years ago and stab you right in the back from now. And they can also practice taqiyya according to their religion. And then they can actually do a form of deception. I can't remember the Islamic term for it, to where, like you see with al-Jawlani in Syria, to where this guy was Al-Qaeda, and then all of a sudden puts on a three-piece suit and trims up his beard a little bit, and all of a sudden he's Western. And we bring a 25 million bounty on this terrorist guy to the White House, and now he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. Islamic terrorists, whether you're dealing with the IRGC in Iran and the Ayatollahs, or you're dealing with Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Hamas, Hezbollah, those types of guys, they don't become good guys overnight. A leopard doesn't change his spots in their case. They are always terrorists. Yes. And so this is what I can't understand our State Department's not getting. And maybe this is part of God's plan of allowing this to unfold, maybe. That's the only thing I can back up it. But it's total spiritual ignorance about Islam. So I don't know. I'm perplexed, just like you, Mike.
Me too, Brandon. So Turkey, we understand Turkey's prophetic role.
Right.
And it sure looks like Erdogan is attempting to establish a foothold, not only in Syria, but I just saw, maybe it was yesterday, I saw this where the talk is now that Turkey may invade Iran. The pretense was this: to stop a mass migration of Iranians coming into Turkey. I thought, that's the best you could do? That's the best excuse you could come up with for stationing Turkish armed forces within Iran? There's something else going on there, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and the thing about it is sometimes these guys project what they already say. And what does Erdogan say? He wants to reestablish the Ottoman Empire.
Yep.
And a lot of these guys, what people don't realize is they're not just, practicing diplomacy. These guys are megalomaniacs, man. Mm-hmm. They want to control the entire world. And whether you're dealing with Iran or you're dealing with Erdogan has said, I want to reestablish the Ottoman Empire and recapture the land that the Ottoman Empire had, which included Syria. That's why he's using Jawlani down there. Jawlani would not have been in power had it not been Turkey behind him, backing him. And then what the next step is to go, and they see a vacuum now with Iran of them being possibly taken out, which they're fine with, because they want to be the major player in the Middle East. They want to be the one in control. And then they want to create, a buffer zone to prevent the Kurdish people on their southern border. So, hey, man, they've been using Jawlani to commit genocide against Christians, against Alawites, against the Kurds, against all those people. And what are they doing? They're trying to get leverage against Russia and Iran. They want to control all of this. And so, like you mentioned, they want to control over the refugees flowing into Turkey. They don't want that happening. And so they are flexing their muscles. And so, I think, again, this plays into, obviously, end time scenario, because one of the players in the Gog of Magog, obviously, and you know this and your audience knows this, is Turkey. And they're flexing their muscles. I don't know what all this means if Iran and the Ayatollahs are taken out. We do know they eventually team up with Iran and Russia in their attack of Israel. But let there be no mistake. Turkey has always had their eyes on Israel. And going back to a mutual friend a long time, and Chuck Missler's not with us anymore, but Chuck always said this: watch Turkey. Always have your eyes on Turkey. Now, remember him saying that constantly in his videos and conferences and stuff like that. Well, it's come to be true. Turkey is a major player. People used to think, well, they're just secular. They have no intentions. They want to be westernized. They're part of NATO and all that. No, that's not what Erdogan's intention is. He wants really a Turkish caliphate is what he wants. So I think that's what we have to keep our eyes on, and they're flexing their muscles, no doubt about that, Mike.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's touch briefly, Brandon, on the this outbreak in Jew hatred.
Yeah, wow.
That's being pushed by some pretty prominent media influencers. It goes. I've said before, you've said it before, people need to understand this. They are, and this is, it's ironic to hear. I just was watching a clip of Tucker from yesterday, talking about those of us who support Israel are shills. And I thought, that's really something coming from you, Tucker. Yeah. Since everybody and their brother knows that you are filthy rich from Muslim Brotherhood money that has flowed in. Your entire platform has taken a hard turn away from any biblical basis, even though he claims I'm a Christian. I read the Bible once. Even though he claims that, right? So people like Candace, Nick, and others have really ratcheted up the rhetoric. How does this fit in your view, Brandon? How does this fit in? We've got midterm elections coming up.
Yeah.
And they in my view, they seem to be splitting the base, fracturing it in thousands of pieces. This doesn't seem like it'll bode well for the Republicans in the midterms. Do you see any connection? Is it foreign money pouring in that's doing this intentionally? I mean, is it that nefarious?
Well, I think it is. So let's talk politics first, and then we can talk to the spirituality, because I think Satan's behind the whole thing too, obviously, sure. The father of lies. So on a political level, I think the intention is to break up MAGA. MAGA was too big of a force, and so what the intention politically, I believe, is to destabilize MAGA and split MAGA right down the middle with the issue of Israel. And I think it's intentional before the midterm elections on a political level, no doubt about that. And what Tucker, Candace, Nick Fuentes, and even Megyn Kelly, to some degree, have established is what we call now the woke right. And that woke right, it's not a real conservative movement. And part of it is it's anti-Israel. And so let's try to understand it from a political level. What are they trying to do? Well, they know the base that supports Trump is pro-Israel. And so I believe when you see a guy like Tucker, who has been platforming anti-Semitism on his platform for the last 2-3 years or so, including Candace Owens. But I mean, some of the people he's had on his show are one guy was a fake historian who claimed that Winston Churchill was the bad guy and Hitler was the good guy. And I'm like, am I really listening to this? Yeah. Now, here's the thing. I know Tucker and Candace and Nick Fuentes are not dumb. These people are very intelligent people. And Tucker was not like this before. I think with Candace, she's always been riding someone's coattails. Someone is influencing them because they weren't like this before. Right. Now, I already know confirmation that Tucker receives money from a Muslim billionaire who is supporting his show and leaning in on that. I don't have the evidence in front of me, but where there's smoke, there's fire. And here's my conjecture, and here's my speculation. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But it appears to me someone is paying these guys off. to say what they're saying. Because why would they destroy, Mike, their credibility as conservative voices and throw it all down the tubes for this?
Yeah.
Well, to me, it would be money. And I have a good hunch that when it all comes out in the wash, you're going to find a money trail behind these guys paying them. Now let's move to spirituality. I think that's what's going on politically. They're getting dark money from Qatar, Muslims, or whoever it is. But behind all of this, then, is the timing spiritually of Satan's global anti-Semitism. And as you know, Zechariah says all the world will come against Israel in Zechariah chapter 12, and it's leading to that point of global anti-Semitism. And what does this do? Well, what we've already seen is the regathering of Israel back into the land in 1948, but what precipitated that, Mike, in Europe or in Russia was the pogroms and the anti-Semitism. And our good friend Olivier Melnick will talk to you about this. Everybody knows that. That anti-Semitism was the driving force of getting Israel back into the land. Now, not all of them went back in the land. A lot of them came here to America.
Yes.
And so we got a huge population of Jewish people here in America. But I think the satanic intent, and God is allowing this, is to foist this global anti-Semitism so that Israel will come back into the land for the time of the tribulation period. And you know, I've read, you know, the guy that really helped me understand all of this is Dr. Fruchtenbaum. Yeah. And his materials saying, look, this is predicted. Not so much the anti-Semitism per se, but that Israel would return back into the land in preparation for the tribulation. And so God, I think, is allowing this anti-Semitism, unfortunately, to bring back the Jewish people to the land for the tribulation. And look, my job and your job and everyone out there in the remnant is to oppose this anti-Semitism, is to stand with Israel and yes, give our Jewish support. And what's happening, Mike, we're starting to see churches and pastors who are in our camp, they're now neutral or just nowhere to be found on the issue of Israel. And so, and then that's my take on it. But gosh, I can go on forever about this stuff. It's really bad, you know?
Yeah, it is. It is. And I appreciate that viewpoint, especially the last comment that you just made. So the issue of Israel seems to have been moved by some of our brethren over into well, that's a political thing, and so we don't really want to talk about that as well as all these other things. It's like, no, it's a biblical issue. And yes, the Bible is clear about what it says concerning Israel. It was interesting. We just had an organization at our ecclesia a couple of weeks ago, and their mission is to assist Jewish people in making Aliyah back to the land.
Yeah.
And it was interesting for me as the pastor that teaches on all of this stuff and what's going on to watch the connection being made. Oh, so this isn't just Pastor Mike saying this. Here's an organization. They're giving us statistics. How many thousands of people yearly are returning to the land?
Yeah.
And I think the recognition then all of a sudden it's like, man, it is happening in our own day right in front of our eyes.
It sure is. And let me add to that, Mike. We personally, our ministry is raising money for Israel. We give to the IDF, we give to the IDF families and many Messianic believers. And what we do is we give them helmets, we give them bulletproof vests and knee pads and different things like that. And what it's allowed us to do, Mike, is lean in on that, because they're asking, why are you helping us? And we say, it's because of Yeshua. That's why. And it gives us an ability to speak to him. Now, here's where I'm going with this. What we have learned is that we're doing that in Israel with some other groups like you just mentioned that are doing that. But most of the Christian groups already pulled out of Israel ever since October 7th. Missionaries that were there left, went back home. And this is what Israel was saying to us. Why did all these Christian missionaries leave when we went to war or when Iran was firing rockets and Hamas is firing rockets. Why did they abandon us? And that really left a really bad taste in their mouth that, hey, I thought you were in it for us, but they weren't. They were in it to save their own skin. And so thank God that you have an organization that's helping out, and there's other organizations like Olivier, myself, and Tom Hughes, and Olive Tree with Jan Markell that are leaning into helping the Jewish people. This is the time to do it.
Yes.
Because if anything, they'll, even if they don't accept Yeshua, they will remember us ministering to them.
Yes.
And so at the opposite end is, hey, where are all the guys, Mike, that are in our camp? I already know where the replacement theology got at. I'm not going to be in on this at all. But when did it become a political issue to support Israel? What happened here? And then conflating it, well, we don't support what the government does. Well, that's not what the definition of a Christian Zionist anyway is.
That's right.
I don't support a lot of what the government does. I didn't support them vaccinating 95% of their population. That was stupid. They shouldn't have done that. But that doesn't mean I'm pro-Israel. Like governmental decisions with Christian Zionism and saying, well, that's political. I'm sorry, that's not what we mean by Christian Zionism. I support their right to the land, the right to defend themselves, the right to self-determination, and that God has a purpose and plan for them. That's it.
Yeah. I'm going to name a name. I typically don't, but I'm going to name a name because I saw this on a social media platform the other day. Matt Walsh.
Yeah.
Well known. He had posted something anti-Israel. It seems like the Roman Catholic Church is lining up to bash Israel and to but anyway, he had posted something and I read through it, and I respond, not that he's going to respond to me or even see my response. He probably got thousands, but I said, what you've just described, Matt, this post, you've just described social Darwinism, aka Nazism.
Yeah.
So you're arguing on the same basis that the Nazis argued against Israel's existence. Is that really the look you're going after? This is what we're seeing today.
Yeah, it's a good point. And the thing about it is Mike, think about this. Okay, Roman Catholicism is replacement theology. That's where it came from. It came from Augustine, for goodness sakes, and making the church replace Israel. They're the new Israel. So here's the thing. I have said this multiple times, and I've seen it in church history. Wherever replacement theology is, it has the propensity to start someone down the path of anti-Semitism. I'm not saying there's a one-to-one correspondence, but my goodness, every time I've seen the pogroms, every time I saw the Spanish Inquisition or the Crusades, their mentality was God's rejected the Jews, they deserve to die. Even Martin Luther and Calvin Martin Luther himself wrote a book on them, the Jews and their lies, and wanted to round them up in their synagogues and burn them to death.
Yes.
And here's Hitler using Martin Luther's words to the German people, saying, this is your guy. I'm just following what your guy said. And the thing about it is, Dr. David Reagan once said in a real good piece he wrote about replacement theology, that is the root of anti-Semitism in the church. So it doesn't shock me when you got Catholics like Matt Walsh getting Nazi sentiment. Because that's where it derives from. And again, I'm not saying that everyone believes in replacement theology turns into a Nazi, but it gives people the theological background to start believing in that nonsense.
Yes.
It gives them the justification, I should say. You know what I mean? Theologically,
Yes.
saying, this is in Scripture, that type of thing. And
Yes.
it's dangerous. It is very dangerous, Mike,
Yes.
as you know.
Yeah. Hal Lindsey wrote a book probably 30 years ago now, explaining all of that, lined up all of the research and made it very clear. I think it was called The Road to the Holocaust, where he described all of that and said, this is what it leads to. And we're seeing a reemergence of that same kind of theology today.
Yeah.
Well, brother, we've got just a few minutes left.
Okay.
And I would be remiss if I didn't touch on Joel 3 and what it says about dividing the land of Israel. So if Christians understood the scriptures, they would see that dividing the land, trying to pressure Israel into dividing the land, is a disastrous thing to do for those who are pushing it. Joel 3 is pretty clear about that, isn't it?
Man, that's the thing. Is like, here's my question. When I talk to a replacement theology Christian or Reformed or whatever, that it's not so much dispensational, what does that passage mean in plain English as you read Joel chapter 3? Yeah. Is that for the past? Because to me, that passage is talking about the future, obviously, and nothing has ever come to fruition in biblical history about that passage. And so it's an eschatological passage. And I would say right there, it says, slavery of Jewish people, dividing the land. What does that mean to you? And you know what I think starts to happen when you push the issue? They have to either punt it to pietism or spirituality and say, well, we just don't know what those things mean. God will work that out, and we can't be sure what that means. And I'm like, dude, the Hebrew is in the 4th grade level understanding. What are you talking about? But here's the thing, though. Mike, I think it's a game that starts getting played. I'm not saying there's a lot of people that are just not ignorant. They're just ignorant, and that's fine. But the guys who know better, like the pastors, okay, those are the guys I'm aiming at. When I bring these things up to them, and they punt it to pietism or spirituality or allegorization, or they spiritualize the text or whatever, I want to come back and say this. In order for you to fit your theology into the text, you're cramming a round peg into a square hole, and it ain't fitting, man. Why are you so hung up on your theology to make things fit rather than just letting the text say what it needs to say? And what you start finding out is the game is, if they're wrong, the whole system of theology that they hold to comes crashing down with the issue of Israel. That's what starts happening. And they have to take the text literally, and Israel means Israel. Well, all of a sudden, their Reformed theology, they have to redo it. And I don't think a lot of guys are willing to just let that whole thing crash. And it reminds me this, Mike, it's the same problem that the Pharisees were having, the religious leaders dealing with Jesus in the 1st century, where he is saying, look, this Mishnah this oral law that you guys are staying loyal to, rather than God's law, that's what I'm come to destroy. Is your man-made laws, not God's laws. I'm come to fulfill God's law, but your man-made laws, I'm going to break. And he did break them intentionally, because there were rules just made up by men, and they wouldn't let it go. They were so devoted to the system. Because of the power, the influence, the money, they basically said, we will not have this man rule over us because we don't want to give up the system.
That's it.
And I'm seeing the same thing in Christianity. I call it the Christian industrial complex. I know that's a crazy word, but it's like, this is where the power is, this is where the money is, this is where the authority is in Christendom, at least in the West, okay? And these guys won't give up their systems. And I see the same thing. And prophecy is staring them right in the face. Yeah. And they won't give it up. So anyway, that's my rant.
No, that's spot on. And I'm getting, I'm thinking about the 5-second rule here, Brandon. Should I say this or should I just,
Well, if you do it, edit it out if you say it.
Yeah, there you go. So, oh, yeah. I'm going to say it.
Okay.
I see that same principle in operation today when it comes to the pro-life movement.
There you go. Good point. Absolutely, right?
Yeah. So,
and
folks can figure what that means, but please, what's your thoughts?
Well, look at this. They have added stuff to the pro-life movement. And if we were just talking about pro-life, we're talking about babies in the womb of a mother, being murdered. That's what happened. They actually extended it, and the Pope even did this, and other Christians even did it, to pro-life means being pro-immigration. And I'm like, what are you talking about? When did pro-life become pro-immigration and pro-illegals? And well, no one's illegal. And so what ended up happening is the boundaries of the pro-life movement started expanding to including, I don't know, victim class humans beyond just babies in a womb. And the movement got hijacked, Mike.
Yep, it did.
Because of that. And I've talked to Seth Gruber about this, and he says the same thing with me. It got hijacked by these progressive Christians. I don't know what you want to call them, but they started opening the borders. And a guy, to name names, Russell Moore did it. And he was part of the ERLC for the Southern Baptists. I think he's over Christianity Today now. But he started down that path.
Yeah.
Along with the Pope. Pope Francis started expanding those boundaries. So anyway, I'm with you. And the problem then it becomes this is people are afraid to go against the system because they don't want to be looked at as, well, you're anti-life if you're anti-immigration. Look, I'm pro-borders, man, because God wants nations, cultures, and language, and he wants borders. I don't want globalism. And the problem is it starts conflating these other victim groups or whatever they want to call them from the social justice realm. And before you know it, pastors won't say anything because they're afraid to go against the system.
Yep. Exactly right.
And God bless you and the remnant circle that says, you know what, I'm not part of the system. I don't want anything to do with the system. I don't want to get paid. I don't want to have to be published by Zondervan or Harvest House because I have to play the game and say what they want me to say. I'm not doing that.
Yep, that's a whole can of worms right there, Brandon. You just opened up.
And you went there, so
maybe I did. Well, maybe next time we'll go down that road a little bit further. But
sure,
rockharborchurch.net, rockharborchurch.net in Bakersfield, California. Go to the website there. Check out the service times. There's a whole bunch of things going on there. You've got some great brothers and sisters around you that are really serving the Lord with a fervent spirit.
Man, we do. We have great staff, great church, man. And you know what's really nice, Mike, is when you start a church from the ground up like we did, you set the tone from day one. And all of our employees, all of our pastors are on that same tone. It's not like I inherited a church and I had a staff that came along with it. And you know the mess that can get into, right? But man, when you start from the ground up and everybody has the same vision, it flows.
Yeah.
It flows and it makes ministry so much easier. I'll just say that. So yes, I have a good staff.
Makes it a joy.
It sure does, man.
That's for sure. Now you've got a prophecy night coming up March the 4th at 6 p.m. and that should be Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah, Pacific Standard Time.
Not Eastern,
yeah.
Pacific. So, and you're going to have a couple of friends out there.
Yeah, we're going to have Tom Hughes. Tom Hughes and I are partnering together doing these interviews where we bring someone in like John Haller. John Haller's going to be coming in. And we sit there and do kind of a roundtable discussion about current events and just kind of chew the fat, so to speak. But, we're in a guy like John Haller or a guy like Carl Tribber like that. Bring him in on a Wednesday night and just rip. Let's talk about what's going on. And honestly, that has been the most well received when we do these sit-down interviews with these guys. People love it. Because we can go in any direction, especially with John, we can go any direction. Hey, let's talk about the Middle East. Let's talk about current events here in America. And it's refreshing. It's not staged. It's not, anything that, we have to follow a script or anything. It's just we go where the Holy Spirit leads, and it's great. So if people can tune in, I think they would really love it.
Yeah. Amen. Well, Brandon, I appreciate you. I appreciate the ministry the Lord has entrusted to you. I appreciate our friendship, being able to do this, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Absolutely. Keep up the great work, Mike. I appreciate all the work you guys are doing. You guys are in the trenches. You're fighting the good fight, brother.
Thank you very much. Folks, that's all we've got for you in this episode. Please share it on your platforms and with your friends. And remember, Jesus is coming back soon. So let's be about the Father's business. God bless you guys.